Today we will be reading The Dog That Dug for Dinosaurs by Shirley Ray Redmond. Selection illustrated by Stacy Shute. Our essential question that we will be thinking about is how can you learn about animals that lived long ago? A long, long time ago, there was a little dog named Trey. He was black and white all over. He had friendly brown eyes and a very wiggly tail. Trey lived in England. Trey was a real dog, and this is an honestly true story about him. Trey loved two things most in the whole world. First, he loved Mary Anning. She was 12 years old and lived with her family in a small cottage near the beach in Lyme Regis. Secondly, Trey loved going with Mary to dig for fossils. Let's pause for a moment. What details does the author give about Trey? Let's go back in the story. It tells us Trey was black and white with friendly brown eyes and a wiggly tail. We also learned that he loved to dig for fossils with Mary. Why do you think the author includes these details? These details help readers imagine how Trey looked and acted. So, what are fossils anyway? They are the remains of animals and plants that died a long time ago. When a leaf or bone gets pressed between layers of sea mud, it leaves an imprint. After many, many years, the mud hardens to rock. Look at this photograph. Why does the author include a photograph of a fossil on this page? This photo can help us as readers understand what fossils look like. How did the shell turn into a fossil? Can you go up above and find how fossils are created? The shell was pressed between layers of mud and it left an imprint. Think about if you push your hand hard on something and then you lift your hand up. An imprint is those marks that it made on your hand. You might do that with your fingernails and lift your hand up, and you can see the imprints of your fingernails on your hand. Well, this is what fossils are like. Trey and Mary knew that they would find the very best fossils high up on the cliffs around the beach. They climbed up there every day. Trey sniffed the rocks. Sniff, sniff. He pawed the dirt. Scratch, scratch. Mary used a small hammer and chisel. Tap, tap, tap. With these tools, Mary carefully cut fossils out of the cliff, just as her father had shown her. Trey watched as she placed the fossils in her basket. Most of them looked like seashells. Mary and Trey sold them as souvenirs to the tourists that came by stagecoach to swim at the beach near their home. Why do many of the fossils found by Mary and Trey look like seashells? One day, Trey and Mary discovered some very large bones sticking out of the rocks. They were huge. Trey growled and tried to dig the bones out. Mary used her hands to brush away the loose dirt. Trey, we've discovered a monster, she declared. The bones were much too big for Trey and Mary to remove by themselves. I'll go for help, Mary said. You stay here, Trey. Trey barked loudly and sat down in front of the bones. He was a very good guard dog. We're going to practice some questioning right now. Remember, questions often start with who, what, where, when, why, and how. I wonder how Mary began finding fossils. I can ask myself, where does she look? What tools does she use? To find these answers, I keep reading. I can go back on page 426 and find that she and Trey find fossils high up on the cliffs. Mary uses a small hammer and chisel. Mary ran all the way back to town and asked some grown-ups to help her. Trey and I have found something really special in the cliff, she told them. Just wait and see. When the men saw the giant rib bones in the side of the cliff, they were amazed. What a beast, they cried. Look at those sharp teeth. Is it a crocodile? One man asked. Or a stubby whale? We don't know what it is, Mary admitted, but we know it's something special, don't we, Trey? Trey yipped and wagged his tail. Friends, why couldn't the adults figure out what the bones were? Well, it's likely they had never seen anything like them before. If we notice in these pictures the clothing that they're wearing, this helps us understand that the setting is long ago. The beginning of the story talked about how it's a long, long time ago. We know that because we don't wear coats like this any longer, and men typically don't dress in clothing and hats like this anymore. So back then, they did not have the technology or the understanding of fossils like we do today. They couldn't just log onto the computer and look things up. A lot of these things had not been discovered yet. A rich man who lived nearby heard about the sea monster. He hurried to see it for himself. I'll buy it, he cried. I will give it to the British Museum in London. Do you know what it is? Mary asked. It is called an ichthyosaur, the man told her. That means fish lizard, he explained. It's like dinosaur with fins. Let's pause for another moment. How does the text explain what an ichthyosaur is? Look back in the text. It tells us right here that it's like a dinosaur with fins. How does the illustration help you understand what this animal looked like? Now let's take a look at our Analyze the Text. Our text strategy this week is fact and opinion. What is Mary's opinion about what she finds? Mary seemed very excited, didn't she? She was amazed, just like the men were. She was so excited she had run all the way back to town to tell people to come with her. She said it was something really special. What facts do you learn about? Well, let's go back and find some. On page 429, we learned that this is an ichthyosaur. We learned another fact that an ichthyosaur is a fish lizard. It is like a dinosaur with fins. How do I know that these are facts? These are things that I can find that are proven true. The amazing news spread about the gigantic fish lizard and the dog and little girl who had found it. Soon many strangers came to Lyme Regis where Mary and Trey lived. They all wanted to hunt for fossils too. The men wore tall top hats. The women wore frilly bonnets. They carried pretty umbrellas called parasols. Mary shook her head and smiled. She rubbed Trey's soft ears. They watched the strangers together. Why do the strangers come to Lyme Regis? And how do they know where to go? They don't have the right tools, Mary whispered. They are wearing the wrong kind of shoes. Aren't they silly, Trey? Trey yipped and chased his tail. Let's look at pages 430 and 431 for a moment. What details does the author include about the strangers? How do you know that the strangers will probably have trouble finding fossils? How should a fossil hunter dress? After you're finished discussing that, look back on this page and reread. Remember what a fact and opinion are. A fact is something that can be proved. An opinion is something that tells how someone thinks or feels and it cannot be proved. Think about our graphic organizer. Can you find an opinion on this page? When you're ready, you can push play again and continue on with the story. Curious scientists visited Lyme Regis too. One man came from the university in Oxford. His name was William Buckland. He went to the old carpenter's shop where Mary and Trey sold their fossils. "Can you show me where you found your ichthyosaur, young lady?" he asked politely. "Do you think you could find the exact spot again?" "Trey can find it," Mary boasted. Why would Mr. Buckland want to see the exact place where Mary and Trey found the ichthyosaur? Together, Mary and Mr. Buckland followed the little dog across the beach and up to the cliffs. Trey sniffed the rocks. Sniff, sniff. He pawed the dirt. Scratch, scratch. Suddenly he yipped. Then he sat down. Mary pointed. It was the exact place where she had discovered the strange fish lizard. "What an intelligent dog!" Mr. Buckland declared. Trey wagged his tail. Let's stop and think. What does Trey do to make Mr. Buckland think he is intelligent? Trey and Mary continued to dig for fossils. They were very careful. Mary watched for falling rocks like her dad told her. Trey looked out for storms and high tides. Then one day, they discovered another giant creature. "Look, Trey!" Mary cried. "Is it a sea dragon?" What do Mary and Trey do to stay safe when they look for fossils? Does this support the idea that they try to stay safe? How? Trey sniffed the skeleton and snapped at it with his teeth. The creature had a long, long neck. Its backbone was like a humped turtle shell. Instead of feet and legs, it had 4 large paddles. But it wasn't a sea dragon. Mr. Buckland called it a plesiosaur. Let's take a look at this page. This page had a lot of bigger words on it. That could be tricky for us to read. Remember, when we see bigger words, such as this one right here, I can think, oh, I see a smaller word, back, and another smaller word, bone. So it's the bone in your back. This compound word can be split up to help us understand what it means. So this must be the bone that was the part of the dinosaur's back. Now, if I'm trying to find facts and opinions here, I can look and oh, here we go. Notice how once again, just like with the ichthyosaur, they give us the pronunciations, kind of like what we see in the dictionary. It's how we should sound this strange looking word out. Plesiosaur. Plesiosaur. This clues me in to the fact that this is a real word and that this is a fact that this is a plesiosaur. And what is a plesiosaur? It was a sea creature with a long neck a humped backbone, and four large paddles instead of feet. One day, Trey and Mary found a fossil that no one in England had ever found before. This one had huge bony wings like a bat and a long, sharp jaw. Trey growled. It looks like a gigantic flying lizard, Mary declared. The scientists thought so too, and that's why they named it a pterodactyl. That means lizard with wings. Over the years, Trey, Mary, and Mr. Buckland became good friends. They showed him where to find the best fossils in Lyme Regis. Look at that photograph. How can it help us understand the creature the author is describing? What do we see in the picture? What does the text say? Do the picture and the sentences go together? Mr. Buckland brought books about dinosaurs for Mary. He brought beef bones for Trey. Mary, with Trey on her lap, studied her books every day. When Trey's whiskers turned gray and Mary was all grown up, they still collected fossils and sold them in the old carpenter's shop. There were boxes and baskets filled with fossils on the floor and on the shelves. Some of the fossils, creatures, were so big they couldn't fit through the door. Sometimes children and tourists stopped in to buy fossils of ancient sand dollars or tiny fish and curly shells. Many scientists came to the shop to buy fossils too. They brought carts and wagons to haul away the really large ones. Why do you think Mr. Buckland brought books about dinosaurs for Mary? Trey and Mary Anning became very famous. Today, if you go to the Natural History Museum in London, you can see the large fossils they discovered together. You can also see a famous painting of Mary holding her fossil basket and Trey the dog that dug for dinosaurs. Friends, why is Mary Anning famous? Why does the painting of Mary Anning show her holding a chisel and a basket? Here is another Analyze the Text. In our Dig Deeper today, we reviewed what author's purpose means. Remember, an author might write for the purpose of persuading us to think a certain way, informing us about something, or entertaining us. What is the author's purpose for writing about Mary and Trey? Now, I've flipped back to the beginning of our story. Let's think a bit more about our fact and opinion. On this very first page, can you find a fact? I found the fact that Mary Anning had a dog named Trey. Now, can you also look on this page and we're going to find an opinion that supports that fact? I see an opinion here. He had friendly brown eyes and a very wiggly tail. Friendly makes this an opinion sentence. That's my opinion. You may not think he has friendly eyes. Now, let's turn to page 428. Take a few minutes and pause and reread these pages. We're going to take a closer look at page 428. When you're ready, push play again. There are some very important details on this page. We learn that Mary went to town and told the adults of her discovery. Would that be a fact or an opinion? Yes, that would be a fact because she did, in fact, run all the way back to town. It tells us that right here. I found that the men were amazed with what they saw. It tells us that here. They were amazed. This is an opinion, though, because someone else may not have been amazed that was standing right there. I see that they know it's something special. Mary tells that to Trey. Would that be a fact or an opinion? Why do you think so? Let's move on to page 430. This time, I want you to push pause in a moment when I'm done giving directions. You're going to reread page 430. Think about all the descriptive words on the page. These words can sometimes be clues to opinions. Can you, in your graphic organizer, write all of the facts and any of the details that are opinions from this page? When you're finished with all of that, push play again. When you finish with this, my friends, I want you to use that graph that you're making of the facts and opinions and continue back through our story. See if you can find more facts and more opinions and discuss with someone or think about how you know it's a fact and how you know it's an opinion.